So tonight we are kicking off our new Thursday night series, walking through some of the stories of the amazing female characters in the Bible. And what I want to do is hopefully highlight some prominent women figures and maybe some less so prominent ones you maybe might not know all that well. Now I'm going to go in rough chronological order, but I'm sure I will circle back to pick someone up because it hits with a theme we're talking about later or something. So mostly in order, but don't yell at me if I go back and pick something up later. And my hope is that we can highlight some of these characters because so often a lot of these characters are overlooked or they're seen as a tertiary character to a larger story. So I want to highlight those characters, but also highlight some of the themes that these characters represent, that these characters embody. So I'm really excited to kind of dive in on this. And so to do that, we're going to start with Miriam. Who knows who Miriam is? If I can get the picture up there. Anyone? Anyone know who Miriam is? So Miriam is Moses' older, that's like that moose. So that's is Moses' older sister. She is the eldest of the three named siblings. So you have Miriam, Moses, Aaron. And she's a really complex character. She is a very loyal character, an extremely powerful leader, as we'll see, has this really close connection with God, but potentially has some issues with pride, and we'll touch on those as we talk about her story. Now, she pops up in 4 places throughout the text. The last one is just listing her as dying, so we're not going to really deal with that one. There's not a lot of story there. But there's 3 main spots where she pops up, and so we're going to talk about each of those and highlight her character development. Now, the first place she pops up is in the Moses birth narrative in Exodus 2. Just quick history of what's going on at the time. Children of Israel are in Egypt. They are enslaved, and their population, their numbers are growing. So a decree has gone out that all male children need to be killed. Moses is born, is male. So that's an issue already. There's a really cool book. I think I've touched on it before. It's called The 6 Women Who Saved Moses. And if you walk through Moses' life, there are 6 major female characters that if they don't make a crucial decision at one point or another, Moses dies. Each one of them saved Moses' life at some point. And we see a lot of them happening early on. The 2 midwives that give birth basically lie and are like, nope, this is definitely not a boy. And his mother hides him in the house for a while. Eventually, that doesn't work because a baby's going to make noise. You're going to notice there's a baby in that house that hasn't been registered that we don't know about. So eventually, gets put outside, put in the basket. That story, Moses in the bulrush basket, hidden out. Now, it's Miriam who's put in charge of watching Moses. Keep an eye on him, making sure he's safe. As she's doing this, one day, Pharaoh's daughter comes. The Pharaoh who made the proclamation that all the male children should be killed. His daughter comes through, finds the baby. And this is how Miriam reacts. This is Exodus 2, starting in verse 7. Then his sister, Miriam, said to Pharaoh's daughter, "Shall I go get a nurse from the Hebrew women to nurse the child for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter said, "Yes." So the girl went and called the child's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, "Take this child and nurse it for me, and I will give you a wage." So the woman took the child and nursed it. Very well played by Miriam here. So not only does she protect her brother by getting him into the hands of the most powerful woman in the land to protect him, but also knows enough to work the situation that her mom is paid to take care of her own daughter. Well done from the very beginning. Miriam is showing a very shrewdness at an extremely young age. So then Miriam disappears for a while. As the rough story goes on, Moses grows up, is a prince of Egypt, ends up killing someone, flees Egypt as a criminal. He has his time in Midian where he is a shepherd. He marries, integrates into a family, has a whole life for him, gets interrupted by the burning bush, is told to go back to Egypt to bring the people out. He goes and does this, you get the plagues, you get all of this. The people are driven out of Egypt and come the Reed Sea, and sea gets parted. Armies of Pharaoh get crushed, and then we get another appearance of Miriam. Now, this is in Exodus 15. This is a passage that is called the Song of Moses and or the Song of Miriam. Now, just from a fun academic standpoint, this is one of, if not the oldest passage in the entirety of the Hebrew Scriptures. From linguistic elements, it seems to predate a lot of the Hebrew that was used. It's a Proto-Hebraic language that this song comes from. And it was sung right around the passing, or the crossing through the Sea of Reeds. Now, what's interesting is a lot of scholarship ties the entirety of the song to Miriam. So if you look at kind of Bibles now, there'll be a subheading starting from verse 1 through 19 that'll be the Song of Moses. And then it'll have another subheading, the Song of Miriam. Those subheadings were added much later. The earliest scholarship tied the entire song to Miriam. For whatever reason, the first part later got attributed to Moses. But we get to the part that is still attributed to Miriam starting in verse 20. So I'll go read that for us real quick. Then the prophet Miriam, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women went after her with tambourines and with dancing. And Miriam said to them, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea." Now, I want you to notice, how is she introduced here? The prophet Miriam. Miriam is only one of a handful of women who get this title of prophet. And with this title comes a lot of leadership and a lot of responsibility. She has a set-aside position of power within the people. So much so that if we fast forward to Micah, which you all should remember, right? You remember everything about Micah we talked about. Everything. Haven't forgot a thing, right? If we fast forward to Micah, God is talking to the people, reminding them, hey, remember all of the things I've done for you in the past, so you can trust me, I'm going to be with you now. Introduces this by saying, "For I brought you up from the land of Egypt and redeemed you from the house of slavery. And I sent before you Moses, Aaron, and Miriam." So these three represent the leadership structure of the people. There's a whole kind of realm of scholarship that talks about what facet of leadership each one had. And there's a whole thing you can do. But these three come together to form a triad of leadership. The three siblings are leading the people through the wilderness. As we're going through the wilderness, we get to the third iteration of Miriam. And this one's confusing. There's a lot that goes on in this one. So I'm just going to read the intro of it, and then we'll talk about it. So this is Numbers 12, starting right at the beginning in verse 1. When they were at Hazeroth, Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Cushite woman he had married, for he had indeed married a Cushite woman. And they said, "Has the Lord spoken only through Moses? Has he not also spoken through us?" And the Lord heard it. Now, scholarship is very divided on what their actual complaint is. So there's two kind of big schools of thought. The first one is that this Cushite wife that is referred to is Zipporah, Moses' wife from when he was exiled, when he was in Midian, Jethro's daughter, that person. The idea being that, and this gets its start from very, very early Midrash thought, that this Cushite woman is Zipporah, and that Moses is abstaining from living with her to try to be extra holy so he can have communion with God. And the idea being Miriam has a big issue with that because that's not fair to first the wife, but also her thing is, well, why are you setting yourself as holier than, shouldn't I be doing this? What shouldn't we all be doing this together? That's one school of thought. The other one comes from the early church father Irenaeus, which refers to, there is another woman mentioned, I'm not going to screw her name up, Thavarus, who is an Ethiopian princess, whose father is mentioned in a passage of a land they passed through. This school of thought is that Moses married her and kind of abandoned Zipporah, and so Miriam's taking issue with that. We don't know which one it is, and that is a very frustrating thing because that would kind of shade how you understand the story. Whatever it is, Miriam has issue with it. Both Miriam and Aaron are going to Moses having issue with what is happening. And it's kind of like, yes, Moses, you are the leader, but haven't all three of us been leading? Shouldn't we be doing this together? So eventually, God calls them all together in a council. God calls them to the tent of meeting, and the pillar of fire comes down and is physically present there, which I think is big, because I think we often think about, like, oh, that God just spoke to Moses. But in this council, all four of them are present there together having a discussion. So did I say the pillar of fire? It's pillar of cloud. If it was a pillar of fire that would have burned the tent up. Pillar of cloud comes down on the tent, and they have this meeting. And God is angry with Miriam and with Aaron. And there's a back and forth of, God says, yes, you both are prophets. But when I speak to you, I speak in dreams and riddles. But when I talk to Moses, I can talk directly. So there's a back and forth of, we're all leaders, but is Moses separate? Is it us? So there's this kind of jostling for position that is happening here. Eventually, Miriam gets struck with leprosy. There's another back and forth of, is this fair? Is this not? Can we be healed? How is this going to work? Eventually, Miriam gets healed, and then the passage kind of just ends, and they go on like nothing happened. There's not a resolution to the story, which is madly frustrating. It's just, and Miriam was healed, and they moved on. What? It just feels like you want more of an ending to that. And that's kind of the story of Miriam, which is a weirdly frustrating end. It starts off with this really powerful moment of leadership, and it grows into a leadership, and then we have this weird ending that just fades away. Because the last iterant of her is she dies before they get all the way to the promised land, and there's a memorial spot known as Miriam's Well that commemorates where the spot, this tradition of where she died. Now, Miriam is, I think, such an interesting character because she establishes herself as a very powerful leader. Moses gets cared for. She's the reason Moses lives early on. She's counted as a prophet, a leader of the people. She clearly has this amazing connection with God, this amazing leadership ability to be one of the three in charge of the entirety of Israel. But it's not all good, because there does seem to be this kind of jealousy, whatever it is that is coming up in that last story. And this is just me talking, but I can see it a little bit maybe if she's like, why is my little brother in charge of everything? He wouldn't be alive if it wasn't for me. Why is he the one in charge of everything? I don't know, that's how I would understand if it be reacting. But we don't know why she was so upset, why Aaron was upset, what was the dynamic at play here. All we know is there was this issue, God got upset, and then it kind of moved on. And the three of them went on continuing their leadership capacity. That is our quick run through. We're going to move to a time of questions now, where I'm going to ask you questions.